A very good morning to all of you joining us for this session on the last day of DigiFest 2020. We're going to move into a panel discussion in a minute and looking at Scotland 2021 and beyond. So really, what are the opportunities, looking at the learning from particularly our current year and experiences, but looking at how we would want health and care and housing services to be influenced and supported going forward. So I'm delighted to pass you over to Professor Ian Welsh, who's Chief Executive of the Health and Care Alliance in Scotland and also wears many other hats. So he's going to chair the panel and the discussion. So I'll hand over to Ian just now. Thank you.
Ian, if you're able to turn on your camera and microphone, please. Thank you.
It's good.
Thank you very much, Margaret. I'm delighted to be here this morning, everybody, from glorious Ayrshire's Caribbean coast with three experienced and talented individuals. Donna Henderson led the telecare workstream of the National Tech Programme, as well as a European programme of activities. And in her current role as Head of International Engagement, Donna leads the Scottish Government's Technology-Enabled Care and Digital Healthcare Innovation Division's International Engagement team. Esther Wilson is a hugely experienced housing professional who has held broad-ranging senior management positions over many years. She's led and managed teams responsible for the delivery of strategic planning, policy, service development and investment functions, as well as holding direct operational responsibilities. And Esther is the Director of People in Place at Viewpoint and Chair of the Chartered Institute of Housing Scotland. Kirsten Urquhart worked at a digital agency when she was young, before joining even younger young Scot as Information Manager, and is now Digital Director and Depute CEO there. And Kirsten received the British Empire Medal earlier this year for supporting young people in crisis during the lockdown. And each of us will pick up on different aspects of the way forward. That'll take about 20 minutes and we'll open up to chat and questions. All of us conscious of the key recurring issues from earlier in the conference. Issues about inclusion, access and digital health literacy. Issues about responsiveness from staff across the range of sectors involved. Issues about building trust and momentum between individuals. Issues around co-design and co-production as partnership contexts. And issues about our readiness to change the way we work. And interestingly enough, digital access as a human right has been one of the key themes that, as we have gone through this last couple of weeks. And a key message from David Nabarro this morning is that people should be the solution and not the problem. And that will be a bit of my theme also. So I'm going to pick up in the current and short-term context of remobilisation and adult social care review, which will inform all our lives in the next few years, and say something about my own organisation's Discover Digital activity. Now, we all know it's been a time of unimaginable pain and uncertainty for individuals and families across Scotland. And that pain and uncertainty is still with us. A global pandemic is a threat which none of us will have ever lived through and which has seen unprecedented changes to all our ways of life now and probably for the next few years. It has fundamentally changed the ways in which we live, work and access support and services. GP appointments being delivered virtually using NHS Near Me, loss or reduction of social care support, delayed or disrupted healthcare appointments are just some of the changes to services we've seen throughout this year. And many disabled people, people with long-term conditions, unpaid carers have experienced all of those. Equally, I learned this morning that digital consultations had increased from 25,000 to an astonishing 75,000 during the course of this year. And Jean Freeman, CABSEC, said the reshaping of the health service is integral to remobilising. And her message has been clear. I need you, all of you, to tell me how we retain a sense of common purpose in health and social care. And as we move further through this initial lockdown period, through this current period of winter planning, modelling for crisis response, redesigning pathways for urgent care, the logistics of vaccine rollout, and begin to adjust and prepare for the ongoing presence of COVID-19, health and social care services are beginning to remobilise. And that raises a vital question. What do people need services to look like across Scotland? And we were asked to undertake at the Alliance a People at the Centre engagement programme. And people have been sharing their experiences of this over the course of the last several months. And key to that has been a demand for choice and flexibility. And digital solutions, as you would expect, have also been part of that call from people that we've been talking to. Equally, however, there is a feeling, a presumption that we shouldn't be assuming that it's digital by default either. Rather, an emphasis has been placed on the right of the person to choose which service delivery option is most suitable for them, given the circumstances and their preference and needs at that time. But we also heard from people about the benefits of being able to attend multidisciplinary teams, professionals, working remotely with greater ease than prior to the pandemic. And we've heard from many people also that accessing mental health services in particular were often delivered well through digital, but were delivered better firsthand. And we also heard about the problem of digital exclusion and the steps that have been taken to make sure that more people are online digitally to get confidence, to enhance their digital literacy skills in order to support their self-management, to stay in touch with families, to access health services. And all of those things, I guess, have been indicators of a requirement for us to try and stitch in the wins that we have got during this period over digital progress. And I'm pretty sure that the remobilisation work will have told us that we need to address barriers to digital connectivity. We need to address the wider issues about reliable broadband. We need to address issues about rural exclusion. So although there was this great groundswell of support during this engagement process, it has also told us that we have key barriers to overcome going forward to make sure we stitch digital into the new normal. We've also been involved in the adult social care review work, which is current and pressing, and we'll report in January. And it's been an interesting exercise for us that we've been able to do an extensive programme, consultation programme, largely through digital means. And we've listened to voices of people and organisations throughout the country on the needs, rights and preferences of people who use services. We've heard from their families, we've heard from their carers. And we delivered a series of digital engagement events with a whole phalanx of organisations throughout the country who receive or commission social support, care and support. We had an open call, an open online call for an online survey for individuals who access social care and support. And we delivered a facilitation pack to other organisations to do their own digital events. So there's been a massive digital drive to build consultation into this key issues. Now, the report you can see on our website. I'm not going to go through all the issues, and that's a matter for the social care review. But key for this is technology is a significant theme across our engagement activity. And the drive through digital for cultural and attitudinal shift has been really, really important. And that's been in all levels of service. Esther's going to talk about housing particularly, but we were delighted to engage the housing side of things and learn their significant digital programme also. There's no doubt as we go forward, however, that it will be crucial to align the requirements for future digital infrastructural investment to meet social care demands. Because going digital in policy strategically, when we are analogue in infrastructure, is a future recipe for deep frustration. And finally, from me, The pandemic has brought challenges and opportunities that have changed the digital landscape forever. How it has taught us about how we reach citizens in a clearer, more direct way. It has taught us that we need to address the issues of digital exclusion. It has taught us that we have a requirement to build capacity of staff. It has taught us that we need to build fresh opportunities for digital in service delivery beyond the significant progress we've made during lockdown. And it's taught us that we need to embed digital skills as elements of the work of people in their day-to-day work. And I think these challenges and opportunities mean we now have a real opportunity to embed digital health and care in the skill set of Scotland's citizens and empower those who could benefit most from the various tools to use them effectively for their self-management and care. And I think crucial to this will be going forward, will be steady, persistent, funded awareness raising and messaging work to create guidelines, to create resources, to create basic tools, and to build up a picture of a skills development and training programme for our citizens that will make them digitally savvy and in front of professionals rather than behind professionals. And most of all, we need to do this in a way that is co-produced with citizens. Now, those three pieces of work have shown that we have an ability to work, shown me, shown the Alliance, and shown government, I think, that we have an ability to work flexibly despite overwhelmingly trying circumstances. We now see more of a focus on digital healthcare consultations. We have a greater role for pharmacists in working with communities to manage demand for medication. We have a greater emphasis on home to hospital monitoring through digital means. And crucially, we have shown that people can come together to show their support for health and social care staff like never before. But it has also shown that rapid scaling of activity is possible in a health and social care system that is very often slow to change and very often haphazard in deployment of innovation. And much of the work we are currently seeing can be transformational and can put us in good stead for the future, but we need to grasp the opportunity. And over to Esther.
Thank you very much. I'm absolutely delighted to have been invited to talk today. I think hopefully that reflects the growing profile of housing in the sort of digital health, housing and care landscape. My opening remarks are really focused around two areas. One is the profile of housing, and the second, the contribution of housing going forward. So I think the profile of housing within this landscape is growing, but it needs to gain more traction. There's no doubt about that. In the housing sector, there's an absolute myriad of examples of digital innovations by housing organisations which aim to facilitate independent living through a person-centred approach, from preventative measures to assistance with daily living tasks. And housing organisations generally have done a huge amount of work around digital inclusion, access, literacy, even the provision of infrastructure as well. And we know how hard it is to get the connection, the right device, the right support to do what we need to do. And I think that was really driven by UK government reforms to the welfare system, which meant everyone went online. So we had no option but to facilitate how our customers were able to access those services, and that has driven change within organisations as well. I think the Tech in Housing programme, which is currently probably coming up to its nearly first year anniversary, is a brilliant example of that recognition at a national level of the role that housing can play. And I think it has allowed the coalescence of organisations to come together to start to harness that collective knowledge and expertise together, and for some of these connections to be made between housing, health and social care. We have 42 housing providers signed up to the Tech in Housing Charter, which I think is a real reflection of the commitment and willingness to engage and the absolute sort of the foresight that people have. They can absolutely see the benefit of what we have to offer and how we connect that to others, and harness that a joint experience to deliver better. I think as well the Scottish Scottish Federation of Housing Associations have recently launched a report called Models of Housing with Care and Support, and digital and technology solutions are absolutely at the heart of that. And I would recommend anybody to read that document to get a sense of some of the contributions that housing can make. Hand in hand with the recognition of the digital and technological contribution is the expressed desire within that to collaborate and engage. And I think that's one of the key takeaways from what we've heard through this conference, and what we would ask going forward is that collaboration and engagement is absolutely key. I think the key challenge in terms of that profile and where we take that is navigating the complexity of the landscape and connecting in with the different streams that are operating and so on. And that's where the Tech in Housing programme I particularly have found helpful, in that you're getting in one place through one source some of that connection and knowledge and information about what's happening, and you're able to make those connections and see where those synergies are. But I think on day one, I was listening to a session, and Angela Curry was talking about, from Blackwood, was talking about the complexity of the landscape, and that's an organisation which has significantly invested in digital and is one of the innovators and disruptors in the sector. And if that organisation finds it difficult, then some of the rest of us are going to find it even harder to find and make those niche connections. I think looking to the sort of contribution of housing, as I said, there's so much that we can offer and bring to the table. I think there needs to be a good understanding from the strategic to the operational level of what that is, but ultimately that will be what unleashes the significant benefit for the country and the citizens of this country. We build new affordable homes to good standards. I've referred to Blackwood housing, and they have got their smart home. We've got in the Inverness area, we've got the fit home. So good digitally advanced examples of what new homes in the future should look like. But we mustn't forget, obviously, that the vast majority of our housing stock is here with us, and new supply and supply as it comes through isn't just through new homes. That's a very small proportion of the total. The vast majority of people will live in existing stock, some of which is old, inaccessible, not energy efficient, not really fit for purpose sometimes. And there's been a huge piece of work around inclusive living and what that needs to look like, how we embrace and include, when we're doing refurbishment activity, what I'd call dementia-friendly standards. I don't think that's my favourite name for it, but making sure what we have is as inclusive as we can make it to facilitate independent living, because that's what our customers tell us they want. Housing associations directly provide telecare to, I think, about 45,000 people in Scotland, and there's this huge opportunity through the switch from analogue to digital. We need to work together on what that solution looks like, both in terms of the challenges around the infrastructure and the structural change, but the opportunities that opens up and how we design what that looks like. Now, myself as a housing association, I'm thinking, well, gosh, there's so many things you could do with that. What is the best solution that we want in terms of what we could do in our properties as a result of that? But there's no point in us doing that alone without connecting with our health and social care partners, who are obviously all looking at that as well, and will have maybe more advanced ideas. But also it's what contribution we can make out with a kind of commissioner contractor relationship, which we can do on our own, but be making that contribution to that strategic desire in terms of what we want for our citizens. So I really need to kind of join that up, I think, a bit more. And I think it goes without saying, working with our customers as to what it is they need and what it is they want. You know, it's easy for me to sit here and think that looks great, but it's not me who's using it. Ultimately, they know what will work for them, what it is they want, and how the opportunity that gives us to provide bespoke solutions to what people need at a point in time that can change over time as well. I think in relation to that whole telecare area, there's the data that can go alongside that as well. And, you know, I think we all know so much more could be done with the data that we have, a bit more proactive analysis of some of the information that collects as well, which again, with customers' consent, could be used to provide some proactive prompts, some proactive observations about things that may be happening in their home, which may indicate issues around health or well-being, and allowing us to intervene early to facilitate that independent living that is their expressed desire to achieve. I think for us, the facilitation of that independent living for us is about sustaining a tenancy. In general terms, if someone has to leave us because their home's not suitable or they aren't receiving, in broad terms, the support that they need to live there, it's a failure. We want successful tenancies. We want people to feel they can remain there and that all the support that they need can come into them. Not necessarily always delivered by us, in whatever means available. But we can have a role in promoting and facilitating some of that. You know, we've had organised the tech industry around wearable devices to monitor falls, to respond to falls, and so on and so forth. These are not particularly new things, but it's about how we enable that to go upscale significantly. I'd mentioned the significant digital inclusion work that we do, and I think that's a real issue for us going forward that we need to address. I think the key issue is probably around workforce and upskilling them, and how they have some of the conversations with our customers around supporting them to take advantage of the menu of options they will have available to them. I think there's a couple of other things I'd want to mention in that regard. Asset management, going a bit left field for a moment, I suppose. Obviously, as organisations, we're always looking at how digital can support our business and how it can make us more efficient and effective. So, you know, do we need to go to people's homes to look at the boiler to see if it's nearly knackered? Or are we using technology to tell us what our boilers and whether the heating's working properly? Now, by dint of that, you're again getting information that could lead you to think that person may be living in fuel poverty. That person looks like their temperature is not right at all. What more can we do to explore that a bit further? There's work with Heriot Watt and their assisted living project, the Robotarium, and so on, that housing organisations are engaging in as well. And promoting things like the Life Curve app, which for some of our tenants will really assist them to understand where they are on that and take proactive action to improve their position and to facilitate their goal of living independently. I think we're looking forward to what comes out of the Tech Scotland sort of Test of Change projects that have just been awarded. I think we're quite excited to see what comes out of that as well, what learning comes from that. But I think my final point, and I'm sure we can pick up on some more bits and pieces through the discussion, would be there is a real willingness in the housing sector to engage and collaborate. We're here and we're ready to do it and we're willing to do it, and we'd be absolutely delighted if you'd come and ask us to be part of some of the discussions that you're having, and we can all reap the rewards as we're going forward, and more importantly, the citizens of the country can benefit from what we do together.
Thanks, Esther. Over to you, Kirsten.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you so much for inviting me to be on the panel today. I think that in a world where we've perhaps been more connected than ever, but probably seen some of the most greatest challenges over the year, the role that kind of tech has played in supporting both our kind of mental and physical health has never been more evident this year. And we've seen some amazing and quite transformational progression, but also the adoption by citizens and professionals alike. And I really believe that this is the kind of start of a significant kind of culture shift and narrative that we can't really afford to regress. And I suppose from a kind of young person's perspective, as we kind of enter the difficult kind of economic and social aftermath of the pandemic, or actually as we're still going through it, challenges around health and well-being may well be higher than ever, and therefore demand and for support and service provision may also be higher than ever. However, we've also got a demographic of young people, many who have grown up surrounded by technology, and so they may well be particularly kind of well suited to the different approaches that we're talking about now and also in the future. And throughout the conference this year, we've heard a lot about the importance of citizen engagement and how important it has been and how important it will be as we move forward. And this has included the really important and significant voices of young people in this. We've also heard a lot about the vital role of stakeholder collaboration, the importance of partnership, and it's really, we've heard things about barriers being broken down, kind of egos being removed, but also us hearing about the real narratives and user stories of people, which I think has been so important. And so I suppose during this time, Young Scot's been delighted to be working with Tech Scotland, and we're working over the last kind of 18 months, but actually probably a bit longer than that, to support a panel of young people through using our kind of Young Scot Hive kind of established co-design and service design approach, where we've had a panel of young people aged from 11 to 26 kind of exploring a wide range of issues in relation to kind of digital health and care. And they have actually released a report of recommendations, which has had a bit of a soft launch during this conference, but I can add the link into the chat so everybody can get access to this. And they also had an opportunity to present during the conference, which has been really important to them to share their work to date. So kind of young people have been fully immersed in this kind of approach. They have come up with a series of recommendations which are centred around education, digital services, citizen participation, actual deployment of digital health and care services, promotion to young people, and education and training. And so they've had a really kind of extensive and deep dive into the issues at play, and it's actually been really amazing to see a lot of these come to the fore as part of the discussion during this conference. So areas that they have highlighted are things around choice, the importance of a kind of blended and inclusive approach to digital and healthcare services, the fact that these should be kind of co-designed by citizens, that accessibility is built in from the start. It's not a kind of afterthought in terms of services, that it supports kind of self-management and care, that it's trusted, that the solutions are kind of trusted, and also there's a kind of diversity of approaches as well, and also diversity of those that are involved in creating those solutions. I think also some things around specific recommendations around being able to contribute to your own health narrative, whether that's through kind of data or being able to kind of input your notes and things, so that actually that kind of real narrative is kind of relevant for health professionals. And I suppose kind of promoting and engaging young people in the spaces and places that they spend time, so that they're able to be aware of what's kind of on offer to them. So things like social media through kind of schools and universities and colleges. So a kind of other kind of key area of reflection thinking about kind of moving forward has been around kind of health information literacy. We know that lots of young people, lots of citizens actually are using kind of tech approaches, or they're using kind of online approaches to kind of support their health needs. So therefore that kind of support, information and guidance around approaching kind of tech as an independent user, I think is really, to manage your own health, I think is going to be really important kind of moving forward as well. And certainly Young Scot, as the National Youth Information Charity, we are always trying to make sure that we're providing that kind of guidance and support to young people. And I think that's something that we have to look at in an inclusive way moving forward. I think, again, kind of picking up on some of the points from Ian and Esther, that access to digital equipment and data in particular, young people might have access to a phone, but they might not have the data package or the, to be able to actually access the services. It's really important. We've seen this stuff reflected a lot throughout the conference. But actually that bit about digital connectivity as a basic human right. And it's also important we reflect on the incorporation of the UNCRC, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, into Scots law, because that's actually about taking a rights-based approach for young people to access kind of health and care services in a digital way in Scotland. I think another particular area for young people, and not just for young people, such as kind of privacy, security and trust, which have to be considered as part of the design of these services. Whilst there's that kind of a general assumption that young people might have access to the technology, do they always have the kind of safe space or place to be able to have the conversation, to be able to engage in a kind of trusted way with the, in relation to their own kind of health and well-being? So that's why it's really important that we continue to have young people specifically involved in the co-design process, because we need to make sure that the services and approaches that are being designed are suitable to their needs. I think another kind of thing for me that's been evident in the past year and through the conference is the need to sustain this kind of quick, agile and incremental approach to development and innovation. We've seen that there's been maybe a lot more acceptance of risk over the past kind of 10 months to move things forward. I was taken by something that was said on day one of the conference by Caroline Lamb that said, don't give me a 5-year excuse when I see what's been achieved in 5 months. And it's really true. We want to make sure that we're continuing that momentum, but we're taking systems along with us and understanding the kind of narrative. So finally, I think moving forwards, we'd love to see kind of young people still involved in this process, that we're able to take forward some of the recommendations from the Young Scot Tech panel. But also young people are telling us they want to be really involved in designing these solutions. They want to kind of roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty a bit with some of this. So it's really important that it's not a tick box exercise, and that young people's voices are really heard kind of front and centre as part of this movement. Thank you.
Kirsten, I was just responding to one of your comments here. Over to you.
Good morning, Ian, and everybody out there. I'm delighted to participate today in this session. So, reflecting really on what we've been hearing over the last 2 weeks, I think one of the key elements of our international engagement activities in the context of digital health and care in Scotland is about knowledge exchange and promoting Scotland's reputation in digital health and care. And I think that probably goes a little bit against the grain for us Scots. We're not that great at kind of saying we're actually quite good at something. And I think reflecting on David Nabarro's comment today, one of his 7 recommendations related to giving praise, I think actually we've got to take an opportunity during this session to actually give out some praise, actually acknowledge the fact that there's been a huge amount of work that's gone on. It's been showcased absolutely extensively over the last 2 weeks. And I think one of the key things that we've tried to do around this promotion of reputation and what we're doing in Scotland is to be very honest about the lessons that we've learned. So what has worked for us, what hasn't worked for us. And I think that's helped us build a really good reputation as a country and as a partner in the digital health agenda internationally. And that's reflected, I think, in the involvement of all our international, European and stakeholders out with Scotland during these last 2 weeks. So we've really seen some great examples from elsewhere in the country, but also we've seen a fantastic representation, the audience that have been participating and listening to what's going on in Scotland. So I think that opportunity really to reflect on what's been achieved this year. It's been a whirlwind of a year. We've heard that from Esther, from Kirsten, from yourself, Ian, from all the other presenters in the last 2 weeks. It's been a whirlwind of a year and everybody has really pulled together across every sector. And again, I think that probably reflects what David was saying again about this honeycomb, as he was calling it, of connectedness, connecting people, sectors, communities to try and pull together to actually achieve better results. And I think for us, where we've also seen good examples of that is where we have reached out to our international partners throughout this year to sense check and ask for advice on what they're doing about particular approaches. So that's sense checking our own thoughts, our own plans against what they're doing to make sure that actually we're going in the right direction, that we can learn from them, and that we can also offer our learning back. So it's a mutual learning experience. And that was particularly prevalent in the proximity app development. We heard from Jonathan. That was the one thing that he said that really stood out. He's very proud of that turnaround. But that work was heavily informed by advice and support from our international partners about what they were doing. And that really did help to accelerate the work that we did here in Scotland. So I think the one key message, I suppose, is that we are very good in Scotland at looking outwards. And I think that's something that we will embrace in 2021 going forward, because there's real value in doing that. I think another key aspect of our international engagement approach is around relationships and partnerships. And I think both Esther and Kirsten touched on this very much around that whole cross-sectoral engagement and involvement, and that has helped to build relationships and partnerships without doubt. It's helped to build on those relationships that are already there. And I think, again, I'm going to keep referring back to David's presentation this morning because it was really, really inspiring. But he talked about trust. And I think the one thing that we've maybe seen throughout this year is really a much greater awareness of the fact that we actually do trust each other across these organisations and sectors. So I think we've seen a big step forward in that. And I'm really hoping that it will actually be that gaining of trust, that we're actually all in this together and we're all actually trying to achieve similar outcomes and aims, that will actually mean that there'll be less likelihood to regress and lose the impetus that we've gained. And I really hope that that is the case. And again, building on that point, relationships and partnerships, we've seen a lot of presenters, as I say, from international partners this week contributing and last week contributing to the programme. And again, that's because they trust us. We've been working with them for a long time. We've built up really good connections. And that's why when we go and ask them for help, they're very willing to do so. And we are very willing to help them. So it's a mutual approach. I think my final point really is around this concept of it was what Kirsten was talking about really not being able to regress or afford, we can't afford to regress back. And that's certainly something that our international partners are saying that they're grappling with as well, this fear that all the progress we've made this year will kind of revert back. I personally think that there is no going back. I don't think we will go back. I think we've really heard what the issues are. I think the presentations in the last couple of weeks have really consolidated what those issues are. We've heard them from many, many different actors and stakeholders. And I think what that has helped to do is really consolidate our joint acknowledgement, I suppose, or mutual acknowledgement of the fact that we know what these issues are. We know what we need to do to address them. And I'm really, really very optimistic, I think, about 2021 and beyond in the world of digital health and care. I don't think that we will be back where we were before. I don't think there's going any going back. And I think on that point, I'll just finish up, Ian.
Thanks very much, Donna. On that optimistic note, you'll probably have heard me say before, as an old man, I've seen transformations recalcify successively over many initiatives. I think so. I take a slightly different view from you. I think you're essentially right, but I do think we'll see an inevitable process of recalcifying. And that's why that's why when I think there's a need for us all to be persistent, disruptive, argumentative, loud, and keep championing progress and connection. So we're on the same page, but I just, the system has a way of trying to re-establish itself, I think. But listen, thanks for all your contributions. I'm looking now for any questions from our audience. A few people have made some comments. I see Anne-Marie, Geraldine have made some comments. So if you want to put your questions into the chat panel, I'll pick them up as I see them. But I'll start the process off, and I'll challenge the panelists to say, succinctly, what would your key your key practical ambition be for the year ahead? Your one key practical ambition be for the year ahead, and what do you think will be the biggest barrier to change for you that you see over the next year? And I'll start with Esther for that one. You're on mute, Esther.
Apologies. It was going to happen at some point, wasn't it? Key practical ambition, I think, is to realise the potential around connecting and joining up housing organisations delivering telecare with local telecare partnerships, because I'm not sure that it's joined up as they need to be. I'm sure it's maybe the case in some areas more than others, but with the analog to digital train well on its way down the track and nearly out the other end of the tunnel, there needs to be some fast and work at pace around that, I think. Key barriers over the next 12 months or so, Ian, was that the second part of your question? Yeah. Where would you start? I think it's twin, isn't it? It's impact of Brexit and that relationship across to the fiscal environment as well. While many of us, I think, have just been dealing with what's in front of us in terms of pandemic, I think that there is the potential that some of the fiscal stuff that's going to come down the line has the potential to derail elements of that, particularly for housing organisations. Our income comes from rents. Now, some of our customers' rents are funded through housing benefit and universal credit. Scotland is in no control whatsoever of what Westminster does around that. So the complexity of that the funding arrangements and how all that needs to come together across organisations to deliver what we want.
Okay, thanks, Esther. Kirsten?
Yeah, I think in terms of kind of practical things, moving forward, I think that continued citizen engagement, I think, continuing to build on the good work that's been done so far around engaging, in particular, kind of young people. But also I think there's lots we can achieve around some of the kind of health information literacy kind of areas as well. I think that while we're seeing that kind of greater uptake of some tech solutions, things like Near Me, there's lots we can learn about where there's been barriers and challenges and what we can do to make sure that citizens are kind of well informed and they know what to expect. And there's no kind of, we can remove the fear potentially from engaging in this way. I think the barriers to that are around, some of the digital accessibility, continuing to work with programmes like Connecting Scotland to make sure that it's top of the agenda, I think will be key kind of moving forwards.
Thanks, Kirsten. And absolutely, Connect Scotland, we need to keep pushing on that. Donna?
Well, I'm actually going to answer one of the questions in the chat because that was going to be the focus of my my responses, actually. So picking up on Ferg's question around Brexit, and Esther touched on this. What do we think that the impact of Brexit's going to have on international collaboration? So actually, that was going to be the focus of my answer, because two things, and I'm going to turn them around a little bit. Key challenge for us is obviously maintaining the relationships that we've built up internationally over the last many years, and the impact that Brexit may have on that. Now, I am a glass half full kind of girl. Sorry, Ian, I am. But so I'm positive from the reactions that we've had from all of our partners since the Brexit Day has been on the cards, that they have got a real commitment to ongoing collaboration with Scotland. There is no doubt that's the clear message that we've had. However, we know that there will be challenges associated with that that are kind of out with our control. So my practical ambition is around us working really hard and making even more of an effort to reach out and collaborate and maintain those relationships. But the challenge is going to be clarity on just, or from a practical perspective, how we can continue to participate, particularly in the innovation space, the funded innovation space, because we have, without doubt, the evidence is there in our current national programmes for digital health and care, where we have accessed EU funding to go through research and innovation projects like United for Health and Mastermind and others that have then informed our remote health monitoring national programmes, our mental health national programmes. So we've really maximised the outcomes and the learning from those projects and used those, just as you should, to go for mainstream programmes. And we've done that really well in Scotland. We've been commended for it. So I would say that that's going to be an area where we are really going to have to put a lot of work into working around that issue, because there's no clarity yet.
And just to clarify, Donna, I absolutely think, apart from any other mechanism to encourage cross-border collaboration, digital definitely has opened, throughout the lockdown, has definitely opened our vision to international communities and speakers and panels. And I, speaking for my own organisation, we certainly now don't feel any barriers to engaging with colleagues from anywhere in the world, and that is a major psychological breakthrough, to be honest, for us, but it will be for everybody else. I think my worry would be just trying to pick up on academic collaborations generally, and how we replace agreements, for international learning and activity. That's me. I'm going to caution Esther. I'm going to come back to Esther to pick up on Tom Morton's question there. So Tom, I'll put you on hold for a minute, and maybe I see Ewan Cameron has provocatively challenged why things have been so slow. Challenged the panel to ask why Caroline Lamb has apologised for 5 years of inertia. Maybe Margaret, do you want to come in on that particular question? While you're waiting, Margaret, I'll maybe have a go at it. Ewan, I think you're the Ewan that I know. You'll know, as I know, my views that the health and social care statutory sector system is notoriously constipated in its desire to change. Traditionally, it's slow, it's cumbersome, it's bureaucratic, it's siloed, and progress, it's overgoverned, and progress can be laboured. That's my diplomatic answer to your question. But there's no doubt that lockdown dynamics has changed the work in government. I've seen it for myself on the Mobilisation Recovery Group, how quickly things can happen, how quickly decisions can be made, how quickly resources can be deployed, and how quickly changes can be made. So I think that's the background to what Caroline Lamb is saying. and those earlier comments I made about the system recalcifying would apply here. That would be my worry. So I think when we get through the next phase of the challenge, the health service, particularly the health service, will need to have a good look at how it can pick up on the good practice that has been engendered over the lockdown period. And I'm going to come to Esther now to pick up on Tom Morton's question.
I mean, I think I've already maybe mentioned one key priority. So another would be around collaboration around homelessness. I think there's been a huge amount of work done through this last 9 months around homelessness, but I don't think it's ever had the consistent focus that it needs across health, housing and social care. I think there are some good exemplars of where things have worked well to recognise the public health aspects of that. But I would really love to see homelessness much higher up in terms of the sort of strategic plan focus and all that sort of thing. And I think, as I say, some of the significant work that was done early on in lockdown to get our street homelessness out of the streets and into accommodation was something that most people thought would never happen and could never be done. And we've now got to take that learning on, but recognise the range of services that need to be put in place to support that going forward. That is not without cost. However, I think most people would agree that that's a focus that's required. My other priority, I think, would be around the engagement of housing at a strategic level. I mean, I'm a great believer that the value comes from shared goals on projects that everyone can get around and work together with their different experiences and perspectives to get a great outcome. But I do think that going back to the Public Bodies Act, it was a mistake that housing was not given more of a legislative right to sit either as an advisor to an IJB, that more housing representatives should be on strategic planning groups. There are decisions taken at IJBs that have significant consequences for housing organisations, and there's nobody there to advise as to what those consequences might be. And I'm not convinced that those who are doing some of the advising have that expertise or seek that expertise to actually assess some of the risks that around some decisions that are made. But I would love to see the law change so that housing is given that footing. But alongside that, just by saying housing has to be there, you have to have an understanding of why it's there. I mean, I've been around a bit longer than I care to admit, I have to say now, but I've been working at this interface for 20 years. And sometimes you get invited to participate in something because it says so on a bit of paper, but no one's actually any idea what your contribution is or what it should be. And sometimes you're not given much opportunity to explain that. I remember one of my earliest experiences was sitting in South Cumbria at a multi-agency strategic planning group and wondering why I was sitting listening to something about fluoride and dental services and things like that. So there's an appropriate way to coalesce, but everybody needs to get around that understanding of what everyone's contribution is and then focus on that where it can make best effect rather than a kind of tokenistic approach. But we've all got learning to do in that area. I'm not saying that we're perfect as a sector either and get it right all the time. In fact, there's some spectacular failures that I probably won't go into here, but do you know what? That's where most of my learning has come from, and we can all bring that to the table. And that capacity to bring that knowledge and learning together could be really powerful and rich.
Thanks, Esther. I'm going to pick up something Esther said there, and I'm going to give Kirsten a wee opportunity to think about Dominic Jarrett's question there, and I'll come to you when I've finished. Just to pick up on that point you were making, Esther. Important for the Adult Social Care Review. I know that SFHE and others have made similar comments through the engagement process about the variable nature of housing involvement in IJBGs across the country, and I was involved in the legislative side of things so the housing statement requirement. Feels like an add-on now, but it felt like a gain then when it was happening, but it's led to variable behaviour across partnerships. So it'll be interesting to see if that is picked up as an issue in the adult social care review. And Dominic, thanks for your question about accessibility. Kirsten picked up on a bit of that earlier, but I'd like her to have a look at your question and have another go. And if anybody else wants to join in, please do.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Kind of the accessibility of kind of health, of any kind of information, but in particular kind of health information is so important. And I think one of the things that was picked up again by the young people as part of their work was this bit about kind of accessibility and inclusivity not being an afterthought. And I absolutely kind of agree that we do need to take a kind of good look at how we're presenting information about kind of services, because actually people like consume information in kind of different ways, people kind of learn in different ways. And I'm kind of quite a big fan at the moment of the acronym TLDR, too long, didn't read. And I think we're quite guilty of that in quite a lot of kind of sectors and spaces where we put really long guides together. They're quite complicated, they're full of acronyms, they assume a lot of knowledge, even down to some of the most basic areas. And so I think there's definitely a lot of work to be done around that, and it should be built in from inception, because actually quite a lot of times people don't engage with a service because there's a fear there or a lack of understanding. And I think if we do want to keep that momentum and move things forward, then that kind of the design of information is a skill, and also different audiences kind of react to things in different ways. We can't just generalize and say that for example, an 80-year-old and a 16-year-old are going to want to consume that information in the same way. So that absolutely has to be built into that kind of design process. And I think that is why it's important we have that citizen engagement throughout all of this. It's not necessarily expecting the citizen to have that very technical knowledge that they need to know about how the systems work, but we need to be able to present it in a way that they're able to kind of support in how we communicate that to other people like themselves. So I think, absolutely agree. It's something that has to be factored into this whole movement, really.
Thanks, Kirsten. And as a former teacher myself, who could tell that? I absolutely agree. We are well behind the 8 ball on easy read activity. I set up the health literacy work within the Scottish Government, Kirsten, and it's good to see that they're reaching out, but we've got loads of work to do on health literacy activity across the services. And we've also got loads of work to do in inclusive communication for people who are sensory impaired also, who are very often excluded from activity. Now, I'm very conscious of our time. We're required to finish on time, so I'm just going to ask our panel to make one concluding remark, one key message, one key thing to say to the people who are out there, either about the conference, your key interests, or your hopes for the future. And I'm going to start with Donna before I wind up. Donna.
I'm just going to go back and touch on what Esther was saying just about housing, and actually, and the previous comment that I made about we have to acknowledge where we're at. And I can honestly say that there isn't another conference like this in Europe or internationally that would have this panel here. Housing are never represented in those events that are involving digital health and care as a concept. So yeah, we've got a long way to go, but I think we really do need to acknowledge that in terms of the cross-sectoral collaboration, I mentioned it earlier, that we have in Scotland, we should be proud.
Thanks, Donna. Esther?
I think my word is one. It's collaborate and collaboration. I mean, the housing sector, we really want to collaborate and we really want to engage, and we're really excited about what that could bring, because we've seen practical examples of how that's transformed people's lives. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. It's to facilitate what they need to flourish and to live independently. And there's no reason why we can't make that happen. So I mean, I would hope in 5 years' time we're sitting here and there's even more collaboration and examples that we can talk of, and the panels are even more varied than we've had at this session. But I think it's been a great couple of weeks.
Kirsten?
Yeah, I would echo what's been said, but I think that bit about kind of keeping momentum going, I think is important. I think we have to keep having these conversations. Let's not kind of regress. And picking up something that was said during the conversation with the CABSEC at the start of the conference, is just because it's not for everyone doesn't mean it's not for anyone. And so it's important to make sure that you know, we don't come to a standstill because it doesn't fit every single need, but actually it's about that choice and that blend. Really important.
Folks, just finally from me, thanks to Margaret Wariski, Vanessa Barry and the tech team for delivering a fantastic conference and to bring an international flavour to an international topic. And it's been fantastic to be here to chair, an honour to be here to chair this event. Normally what I say at the end of these kinds of things are safe journey home. In this case, it'll be a safe journey through to the kitchen to get your dinner or a cup of tea. And thanks for your involvement. Over and out.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.